Welcome back to another video on the ongoing build of my KP61 Toyota Starlet. Now if you're following along, you've seen the last handful of videos have all been split up videos on the fabrication of the turbocharger package for the 4AG, which is sitting in this car, just out of shot here. Now, one of the last major fabrication jobs which I've just ticked off has been the full stainless steel exhaust. This exhaust ranges from the big 4-inch dump pipe down into 3 inches underneath the car and then up the back. It's been a big job, a lot of work, just like the rest of this, all the fabrication's been on this car. I've really made a bit of an effort to try and just hand build as much as I can. I really like that aspect of building cars. A lot of the stuff I probably could have bought off plenty of reputable parts manufacturers and whatnot, but I'm just a big fan of doing what I can and seeing where my skills will take me and trying to build parts. It's good fun. So yeah, this exhaust, lots gone into it. A few major hurdles really, which have just been pretty much all come around because of the height of the car. I'm a big fan of low cars for reasons that escape me, but this car's nice and low, so you run into ground clearance issues and body clearance issues. So there's been a lot of work getting around that. I did a bit of a tally up when the exhaust was done at how much welding had gone into it, and there's roughly about 8 meters worth of TIG welding, so which is a lot, it's a long way to weld. But it's turned out great. I'm real happy. So yeah, sit back, take a watch. Hope you enjoy what you see. Yeah, hopefully learn something. Like I keep saying, I pretty much learn something every time I build something, learn what I did wrong, and hopefully change it for the better for the next time I do something. But for this, I'm stoked. The exhaust is done and getting very near being able to start this thing up, which I'm stoked about. So yeah.
Finns sono reggaetori mia scelta to snagation. Me tono io tra mio sono tutoro io trovesce in regondi ci maria io con aiuto ro scene sera e da votare con scene idee tutto male era vasciu e travesco. Me una polomo i farà congiù e sana concella vance? Non sei. Mais des fois on peut voir parce que les gens ici faire des choses, on peut manger. Mais quand tu es fâché avec quelqu'un, c'est for the first time. And that's one of the things that I enjoy most about this convention. It's not so much as so little as to do with what everything is. But it is within our self-interest to understand the topography of our lives unto ourselves. The future states that there is no time other than the collapsation of that sensation of the mirror of the memories in which we are living. Common knowledge, but important nonetheless. As we face fear in these times, and fear is all around us, we also have anti-fear. It's hard to imagine or measure. The background radiation is simply too static to be able to be seen under the normal spectral analysis.
But we feel as though there are times when a lot of us, you know what I'm saying? But like, you know what I'm saying? Because like, as a hip hop thing, you know what I'm saying? Like Ted, you know, Ted be rocking, you know what I'm saying? So like, so I wrote a song, and I hope you guys dig it. It's a song about people and Sasquatches, and other French science stuff. That's French science. Okay, here we go. I've been trying and look around you, that I'm in trouble, trying to say, but every time it gets me here, I'll say, but there is nothing to say. you're bound to burn. And you can do anything as long as you don't hurt along the way. I've been surround, I wanna tell you what is around my mind. 'Cause if you were to walk in a seaside, and I said that you love and I know, did you want to I want it, I want it, I want it, And it's like, you know, you can use as many of those things that you want, right? And the computer models, no matter how many that you have and how many people that you use, are never going to be able to arrive at the same conclusions. 4 years ago, I worked with a few people at the Brookings Institute, and I arrived at a conclusion. Tomorrow is another day. Not just any day, but it is a day. It will get here. There's no question. And the important thing to remember is that this simulation is a good one. It's believable, it's tactile, you can reach out, things are solid, you can move objects from one area to another. You can feel your body. You can say, I'd like to go over to this location, and you can move this mass of molecules through the air over to another location at will. That's something you live inside of every day. Now, with the allocation and the understanding of the lack of understanding, we enter into a new era of science in which we feel nothing more than so much so as to say that those within themselves, comparary or non-comparary, will figuratively figure into the folding of our non-understanding and our partial understanding to the networks of which we all draw our source and conclusions from. So, as I say before the last piece, feel not as though it is a sphere we live on, rather an infinite plane which has the illusion of leading yourself back to the point of origin. Once we understand that all the spheres in the skies are just large infinite planes, it will be plain to see. Okay? This is my final piece. And just remember, everything you are is more important to realize the negative space, as music is only the division of space, and it is the space we are listening to, divided as such, which gives us the information in comparison to something other that gives us the idea of what the idea that wants to be transmitted wants to be. So please, without further ado. Thank you. All right, this is a fun one. It goes like this. Okay, now for the last piece I'd like to do, this one goes very similar to this. I hope you guys recognize it. Here we go. Okay, that still works. Okay, good. All right, here we go.
So I've got all the major pieces for the first half of the exhaust, the downpipe, and sort of to the back of the gearbox all ready to go. So obviously I made the dump pipe up a little while ago now. So this is 4 inch, is it 4 inch? 5 inch? Can't remember now. Big diameter, shape to fit the back of the turbo, internal wastegate, all that sort of stuff. Now, this last piece I've been making, there's not a lot of clearance underneath this car. When I was doing the body, I really should have maybe cut an exhaust tunnel, but I was pretty keen to not modify the body too much on this thing, so I haven't. So I've taken a piece of 2-inch stainless pipe, cut it in half and widened it to try and make this exhaust low profile. This sort of sits between, this is the bottom of the car, the gearbox is here, and there's a chassis rail here, so this sort of tucks in between the gearbox mount and the chassis rail, and hopefully give us a bit of ground clearance, and with also still keeping a reasonable cross section for the exhaust. So I've just adapted it from 3-inch into that. There's a bit of, not the flashiest looking thing, but it'll do the job, and it's a bit of stuffing around, but it's all good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get this dump pipe back onto the turbo. This sort of sits about there in relation, and we'll sort of pre-cut this a bit, so roughly about there. So now, one trick I've learnt with doing exhaust over the years is, and I've definitely stuffed it up, but making sure everything's bolted up properly, because if you leave your dump pipe slightly loose, or the turbo slightly loose, or not done up properly, when you finally go to put it back on, it actually changes by, could be a couple of millimeters, but it ends up affecting lots later on. So I'm going to make sure that dump pipe's on properly, even things like gasket thicknesses and stuff. So I'm not going to have gaskets on it, but just I'll account for the thicknesses that a gasket would normally be. Now, so it's actually under the car now, but I've got a V-band clamp and a bellow or a flexi to put in this exhaust somewhere, and I was real keen to stick it here, put the bellow there or the V-band there. I always try and keep the V-bands, so obviously the way this is the ground will be running this way. Quite commonly people just put a V-band there, say from that to that, and I've found always try and get your V-bands up somewhere out of the way of the ground, because even if your car's not low, you clip a V-band and you stuff them, and then you ruin your exhaust basically, or you need to weld a new V-band on or whatever if they get ground away from the ground. So I was going to try and maybe put the flexi and the V-band there, just so you take the exhaust off, but there's just really not quite the room. So hopefully I'll make this downpipe into this piece or one piece. Once I've got that welded up, I'm going to then have to do the same as this to put it back to 3-inch before it tucks up and goes on further in the car. So I'll try and incorporate the V-band and that flexi somewhere there, sort of right around the end of the gearbox area, and then so the exhaust will be in 2 pieces. Then it'll be this full downpipe, which you'll be able to stick in from under the car easy enough, and then the back half of the exhaust can come off. This also means that I can keep this front section of exhaust rigid with the engine and gearbox combo, and then the back half of the exhaust can be rubber hung and just try and keep a little bit of vibration out. Not that it will probably make too much difference, because this engine gearbox is solid mounted and it vibrates anyway, but sort of just do what I can. So I'm going to concentrate on getting this up in the car nice and solid, get these in position, tack them up. I had them up under there before, and it's looking like I might have to really try and cut this as sort of far back as I can. The only problem is I can sort of cut to about there, but then I might find that there's too much of a gap around these bits, so I need to try and shorten it up, because it looks like there's a lot of room under there, but it's just trying to keep it close to the floor for ground clearance, but just also not banging stuff. So let's see how I get on.
Yeah, yo.
So you just see me weld it up. I purge welded this thing. I sort of think with exhaust, with stainless steel, you really do need to purge it, but with an exhaust you can sort of get away without doing it. But I did on this just because there was a lot of welding, especially in this area, and there was a lot of gaps that would need to get filled, just with this being a bit of a mission to make. So I thought purging would be best. Now once I've sort of done this downpipe, I think I'll just weld the rest of the exhaust without purging it, most likely. That's all good. So now I need to start to finish this off really, and like I've said, I need to include this flexi or bellow and this V-band clamp. Now ideally I really wanted to stick that in there somewhere, keep that out of the way of the ground, but it wasn't going to work. I couldn't really fit it in there without maybe chopping all this up. I could have probably maybe fit it in, but it wasn't really going to work. So I'm going to try and stick this around about here somewhere. So I need to adapt this back up to 3" like I said, and I've hopped underneath with this bolt up and had a look, and there's quite a bit of room around where this is going to go. So the only thing is really just trying to keep this above the, keep this up nice and high for ground clearance really, because these will get chewed up and so will the V-band clamp if it hits the ground. So although this really isn't the ideal spot for it, well, what I would normally do, it's sort of the only space. So this vivid mark here is about as far back as I can take this to start going into 3". But I do have a bit of room, sort of, I don't know, from about there to about here where I can try and stick this in, and it's not too critical for angles. So I think what I'll do to try and get this to 3", I might just squash one end of this down to roughly the right oval, see how close it matches in. I did look, and I'm going to offset it right to the edge here, the merge into 3, and on a slight angle, sort of roughly about that. So I'll sort of just bend and squash things until they line up and look alright, and then weld it up. So I'm going to work on doing that. Yeah, I'll incorporate the flexi into the downpipe side, so it'll go back into 3". This will get welded on, and then one half of the V-band clamp will get welded on there. And then there'll just be, like I said, a little brace somewhere around here to the gearbox, or the gearbox cross member, and then that's all that done. And then there I can build the rest of the exhaust separate. So going to do a bit of tooling now with that and see how I get on.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate. Only the unloved hate. The unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
That's the dump pipe all finished up. It's taken a lot of work for this little piece. It's only just over 1 metre long, and there's probably about 3 or 4 metres worth of TIG welding in it, so it's been pretty time consuming. But it's all ready to chuck back in, up in the car. So that last piece I was just doing, I just built a bit of a skid plate over that flexi joint there. Like I said, I would prefer that not to go there, but there was nowhere else I could fit it, and I really don't want it to get wiped out by hitting the ground. So I put that bit of a skid plate under it, and I've also just incorporated that mount there so I can brace that to the gearbox. So yeah, now this is all done, I'll stick it on. I'll end up making a mount off this bolt to the back of the gearbox, and then it keeps the downpipe all rigid, and then I can concentrate on the last part of the exhaust, which is hopefully nowhere near as much work as this. It's now that it's done, it's like, man, I really should have cut an exhaust hole in the car before I painted it, but it's all good. I wanted to keep the body pretty stock, and it's been a bit of a fun exercise anyway to do all this to get it to fit. It's a hell of a contraption. But it's shaped up good. Got the rest of the exhaust all tacked up. Now I didn't film this, it was a bit too hard underneath the car, only being on these caster dollies, so I just knocked it out. It's pretty basic, you don't need to see me chopping and tacking bends together. Now I'm going to weld the full pipe up now before I weld the muffler on the back. And the muffler I've got is the one off the old exhaust, along with the bracket that I've got welded there. I didn't realise, I thought the muffler was the right size, but it's actually a bit small. It's like a 2.5 inch, whereas this is all 3 inch. So at some stage I will chop that muffler off and weld a decent muffler of the same size, of 3 inch size, sorry, onto it. But for now, this is going to do. The V-band there just goes from the dump pipe mode, sneaks along to the mount. This goes underneath the diff rather than over it, and then yeah, so I'll weld it up completely just in case it does warp a bit, stick it back on if it looks good, then I'll get under there and tack the muffler back on. Now, it doesn't look like much, but there's sort of like 3 or 4 bends in it, and a bit of straight. Now, I thought I'd maybe talk about terms you might hear. So I've used some 45s and cut some 90s up to get the bends I need. Now in a few places I've what's called cheated the bend, which means, well, here's a good example of not actually cheating a bend but just cheating it straight. I actually cut the end of this pipe on a slight angle so that V-band is actually slightly cocked over. Now it's not the most perfect way to do it, but rather than putting a slither of an angle pipe just to get the right angle, you can just sort of cheat it a bit like I've done there. I'm not sure if you can, oh there you go, there's probably a good angle of it, just to get the angle I need. And then a few of these bends, so when you say you cheat the bend, rather than cutting them dead square with the angle you want, you can just sort of slightly cut them offset a little bit, otherwise it can be an absolute mission trying to get everything bang on. And although you should strive to get it right, I think for an exhaust, when it's under a car or whatever, the only thing really is if you might notice that it looks a bit weird, but as far as functionality goes, it's perfectly fine, and it helps saves time spending under the car and just constantly fitting and refitting stuff. I think there's nothing wrong with it. So anyway, that's all done. Looks good. So yeah, gonna weld it up and chuck it back up under the car.
Listen, let me tell you about people. People are opportunists. They look for a chance for you to fall, but they stay close to you as if they're your friend or you're in power. But as soon as the opportunity comes, and they may help the opportunity by putting somebody, by planting somebody in your situation, and as soon as the time comes where you're down and out, that's when everybody stick their forks in your neck and in your back. But then one day, if you're strong and you overcome your adversity, then it's going to be their turn. But let's see how well they handle it. I don't think that the people that can handle it well as I handle it. They're not as tough as they think they are. Everyone thinks they're a tough guy, they're a big shot, but they're not, deep down inside. If you strip them down for what they truly are, they're cowards, because they manipulate and they misuse people. And only cowards do that because they're insecure themselves in their own manhood. I talk to the smallest, wimpiest guy in the world the same way I talk to the biggest, baddest motherfucker. I say something behind their back just like I say it in front of their face.
Vous avez eu l'occasion de compter vos amis?
No one knows who their friends are. The only reason they become your enemy because at one time they were your friend. Somebody out the blue can't be your enemy. Guys walk down the street, you can't walk down the street, I hate Mike Tyson, I want to kill. Or somebody that gets to know you, they get familiar with you, and familiarity, as you know, breeds contempt. Then they want to be you. And they can't understand, they may be a college man, or maybe gorgeous looking, they can't understand why God is not so attractive and not an educated man rise to the occasion which he is, meaning myself.
Here we are. Exhaust is all finished up. It's looking pretty sharp. As usual with this car, it's been a hell of a lot of work, but it's turned out good and I'm stoked on it. So just to recap, off the back of that turbo there into, well, shaped pipe there to incorporate the internal wastegate and make it as big as possible, into that 4-inch pie cut dump pipe, juice down into 3-inch, and then sneak into this oval section to fit under the floor in between the chassis rails and the gearbox mount, give it some ground clearance, back into 3-inch, into the flexi V-band, I'll spit a 3-inch straight, and then weaves its way out the back to the mount, and then onto the back of that muffler there. So like I mentioned, I'm going to change that muffler at some point. It'll do the job for now. But yeah, it's looking good. Chuck that back in the car now that I've finished it up, and I thought I'd better put it together on the bench rather than trying to show you under the car. The one part I probably haven't shown yet is that's the mount there. So back of the turbo, under along the gearbox, and then that mounts to the back of the gearbox here. So it keeps this dump pipe and front section nice and rigid, and then this will show you how much sort of flex it's got in that flexi there. So plenty of room to move there. So, but obviously that's the rigid part. Yeah, it's looking good. I'll chuck it in. Well, hope you enjoyed watching that. As you saw, like I said at the start of the video, a lot went into it. It was a pretty big job, but yeah, here we are. It's all done, so I'm stoked. Now, as we speak, I'm just finishing up a few more little jobs on the car, and yeah, give it a few more good solid days working on it, and I think we'll have something that I can start and at least move out of the shed under its own power. So at the moment I'm working on finalising the ignition system, which I'm changing from distributor to coil on plug and different trigger system, and getting the sump to work so I can put the drain and stuff in for the turbo, all just the little sort of time consuming stuff. So yeah, keep an eye out for the next video, which should be the last little finalising bits of making stuff for this turbocharger package, and then yeah, fingers crossed we can get a good run out of it. I had a thought about the process of getting this car to go and what I should do, and what I've decided is I'm going to, you can see there, I'm going to leave the motor it had in the car, which is the motor with a small port head on it, put all this stuff that all these parts that I've fabricated on, get the car to go and run and at least move under its own power, and then once that's all good, then I can sort of park the car up, and I will, if you can see it here, the big port motor there, sort out getting the parts I need, pistons, just building a block that's going to handle this boost, and then once that's all done, then I can look at pulling this motor out, tidying that all up, building it, bolting everything to it, and then back in the car, and should have a car that I can start tuning and then get it to go properly. So I'm looking forward to that. Still a little way off the finalised version, but if I can get some noise going out of this thing, I'll be stoked. I think anyone that's built a project car knows that when you finally sort of start them up, it's a big kick in the arse of motivation. So looking forward to it. So yeah, thanks for watching, and look out for the next video. Cheers.